Proverbs 3:7. This is the first verse of the new couplet here. Be not wise in thine own eyes, fear the Lord, and depart from evil. So let's look at that first part. Be not wise in thine own eyes. It is fools, not sages, who think themselves wise. People that are truly wise don't think that they're so wise, right? They are little in their own sight. There's that phrase that was used of King Saul that when Samuel told him, when thou wast little in thine own sight, the Lord made thee head over the tribes of Israel. It was not whenever Saul was puffed up with pride like he was later on, but it was when he was little in his own sight. But he wasn't a little man. He was actually head and shoulders above the rest. But he thought of himself little, according to Samuel anyway, so it's true. And the Lord exalted him, right? Humble yourself, you'll be exalted. So a truly wise man is little in his own sight, whereas the fool is wise in his own conceit. Look at Proverbs 26 and verse 12. Proverbs 26 and verse 12. Seest thou a man wise in his own conceit? There's more hope of a fool than of him. So it's a foolish man that thinks he's wise. Being wise in one's own eyes is a form of pride, and the definition will bear this out. Pride is the quality of being proud, a high or overweening opinion of one's own qualities, attainments, or estate, which gives rise to a feeling and attitude of superiority over and contempt for others, inordinate self-esteem. So normally, those two things go together, having a high opinion of yourself and a low opinion of other people, right? Because in order to have a high opinion of yourself, you have to, in your mind, degrade other people and set yourself up on the pedestal, right? Because if you had a high opinion of other people, it'd be harder to have a high opinion of yourself if you're comparing yourself with them. So in order to do that, we have to bust other people down. That's how it usually works. A proud man will never become wise for the simple reason that he already thinks he is. Right? Remember the whole acknowledging, you'll never get over your problem until you acknowledge you have one. Well, you'll never become wise until you admit that I'm really not that wise, right? And I have things to learn. And that's why I believe some people are converted to the truth and some people aren't. Because some people think they already know the truth. And if you think you already know the truth, it's one thing to think you know the truth, like, okay, I think I believe the truth. It's another thing to think you know the truth and you couldn't be wrong. And you're just certain that I absolutely know, I know what the truth of the Scripture is. And nobody can tell me otherwise. And I've met people like that. There's nothing you could say to change my mind. Well, I'm not going to waste my breath then, right? You just told me. I may as well not even say anything. And I hope, I don't think I've ever said that, and I am really careful not to say that I'd never change my mind. I would change my mind. I have changed my mind. If somebody shows me that I'm wrong, I would gladly change my mind. But proud people won't do that because they can't. It's just too painful to admit that they were wrong, right? And nobody likes to be wrong. It doesn't feel good. But you know what? I'd rather hurt a little bit and then be right than think that I'm right and avoid that little bit of pain. Those who are wise in their own eyes demonstrate such by the following. So here's 3 ways that people demonstrate that they are wise in their own eyes. Number 1, not seeking counsel or asking advice of their elders. And I think that this is just so ingrained in human nature, it's really hard to break out of. And I will tell you, in my experience, 6.5 years, which isn't all that long, but it's long enough to learn a thing or two. 6.5 years in the ministry, it's been my experience that almost nobody does this. Almost nobody seeks counsel or advice from elders, whatever, older than they or pastor or whatever. Like as a pastor, I know a lot of people sometimes let me know what they've already decided to do, and I think that's just to get my blessing on it. Like because they for some reason they think they need my blessing. You don't need my blessing. You need my advice if you want it. Right? Because my blessing is, who cares about that, right? Blessing doesn't mean anything. You don't need my blessing on something. I've, and that's what I've noticed. I mean, with rare exception, that, and I know why it is too. It's because typically when somebody wants to do something, they want to do it, and they're going to do whatever they want to do, and if going to somebody else for advice and they know that the advice is not going to be what they want to hear, then they don't go for it. I've tried not to do that in my own life, and I've told you this before. There's not I can't think of a major life decision that I've made that I have not truly sought counsel and advice for. I never do that. I really do try to practice what I preach. Like before I got married, for instance, when I first started first started talking to her, I talked to my pastor friends. And it wasn't just to get a rubber stamp. It was just tell them about it. What do you think? And they said, well, just be careful. She might be trying to get a green card. Who knows what, right? That's good advice. And I, of course, I knew that. But, and then whenever I made plans to go over there, I, of course, sought counsel before I did it. When I was thinking of proposing to her, I called up my pastor friends and asked, what do you think about this? I don't make major life decisions without asking counsel. And I really try, and I realize human nature is so opposite of this, and you can easily deceive yourself, but I really try to not make up my mind on something until I have honestly asked for advice from somebody wise. The business things, the 3 businesses that I've started, every single one of those, I sought advice and counsel, and explained what the model was, explained what I was thinking about doing. What do you think about this? And I talked to at least 2 of my pastor friends about that. I did not make any of those decisions without seeking counsel. When we bought the trailer up there, I called up a couple of my pastor friends. Even 2 church members, I had them come over and look at it. I really wanted to have advice and counsel before I did that. I just can't think of any major decision that I would ever make without seeking advice first. But like I said, I just think that it's so against human nature that it's really hard. Because what we normally do is we make up our mind what we want to do, and then we look for validation for what we already want to do, and we hope to get a rubber stamp from somebody of what we already have decided to do. The second thing is that you can know if you're wise in your own conceit is by doing far more talking than listening in conversations. Right? You've heard the old saying that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should use them proportionally, right? And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And then the third one is always, people that are wise in their own conceit, always end their sentences with periods instead of question marks, right? Making declarative statements instead of asking questions. And this, once again, this goes against human nature too, because it's just natural. We want to tell people what we know. We want to feel like we are the ones that we have some good advice or some good knowledge to give out or something. And it's difficult to learn to ask questions. Sometimes if I think about it, it's easy to do. Naturally, I'm not Larry King asking questions. But if I think about it, like today I was at the chamber meeting and I was talking to a guy there, and he was a chiropractor, and so I had some questions for him, and things that some of them I have an inkling about, but I was just curious what he thought, and I asked him what he thought was causing all the cancer that we've had in the last few generations, what he thinks caused, and if he thinks there's a link between vaccines and autism and that kind of thing. And I don't know what causes cancer. I'm not totally sold on the vaccine autism thing either, though I suspect it, but I can't prove it. I haven't done enough research. But I was really asking questions because I really wanted to get his opinion on that and see what he thought from a medical standpoint. And I'll tell you what, if you want to get on somebody's good side, ask them questions, because people love to be asked questions because it makes you feel good. It makes you feel special, like somebody actually cares about what your opinion is. And so that's a great thing to do to build a relationship with somebody. Ask them questions. Ask them questions about themselves, because that's most people's favorite topic, right? And it's just, it's the truth, right? I'm not up here on my high horse. I'm like anybody else. Most people like to talk about themselves, right? You start asking them questions. So 3 men come to mind who are often wise in their own eyes. And this would be the young man, the formally educated man, and the rich man. Now, I mean, it's certainly not limited to those 3, but I would say those 3 would be 3 major groups of people that think pretty highly of their own education and intelligence. So the young man, first of all. The young man is idealistic, thinking the world should work in accordance with his conceptions of reality. And that's typically what young people think. They just think that the world will work the way that they think it should, and they come to realize eventually that, you know what, it doesn't actually work the way that I think it should. And millennials are the worst for this. Like, just there's videos, like funny videos made about it online about millennial job interviews, where they just go in there and just like they're just telling the boss what they want and how it's going to be, or how smart they are, or what they know. And it's like, that's very, anybody that ever goes for a job interview, that is, I'm sure you have, very distasteful when somebody sits there and bloviates about everything that they know and what they can do and how smart they are, and especially when he starts telling you how, oh, you know what, if we did this and this, we could really fix this department here, and he's not even working there yet. And like, yeah, exactly, exactly. Not to say that you couldn't learn something from somebody new with a fresh pair of eyes, but on the other hand, you know, I'd want to hire somebody that has the humility to realize that they have something to learn too. The young man's confident because of his vigorous youth and his lack of understanding of the hard realities of life. And therefore, he sees no need to seek counsel from those older and more experienced than he. And then you have the formally educated man. And this guy has letters behind his name. And they assure him that he's wiser than people that don't. Right? If he's got MA or MS or PhD or whatever, he's got some letters that says that he went to some institution for a few years and, you know, probably got himself $50,000 or $100,000 in debt, and this makes him smart because he's got letters on the end of his name. He paid, and then I put in parentheses, borrowed a small fortune for those letters and spent many years of his life obtaining them, and therefore he certainly doesn't need to bother asking for advice of those whom he deems less intelligent than himself. All right? And there's a lot of pride that goes into higher education. You know, people, typically PhDs are probably not the most humble people you've ever met in their lives. They think a lot of themselves. And no doubt, I'm sure they're smart, right? You don't get a PhD it doesn't get handed to you. You probably have to be pretty intelligent. But never confuse intelligence with wisdom. There's a big difference between intelligence and wisdom. You can know a lot of things and a lot of facts, but that does not necessarily make you a wise person. And then you have the rich man. The rich man equates wealth with wisdom and assumes that anyone that has not the former lacks the latter. So if you're not rich, you obviously don't have wisdom and intelligence, because if you did, you'd be rich. He could not be more wrong, though, according to the Scriptures, because the Scriptures say, the rich man is wise in his own conceit, but the poor that hath understanding searcheth him out. Proverbs 28:11. So the Bible actually says that the rich guy thinks he's wise, but a poor man that has understanding will search him out. He'll be able to probe down and find out that rich man's not as wise as he thinks he is. We're told in Galatians 6 and verse 3 that the man who thinks himself to be something when he is nothing deceives himself. That's something I'm still working on. I still have it on the back burner, this sermon on deception that I told you I've been thinking about. The idea of self-deception is particularly interesting, I think, because it seems like, why would we want to deceive ourselves? Because if you know something's not true, why would you want to convince yourself that something's not true and believe it? But it happens all the time.
You have to believe it's true if you follow through with your plans.
Right. Because what happens otherwise is cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is holding two contrary opinions at the same time, and the human mind just doesn't like that. You can't, like, if you know something's wrong and you're doing it anyway, That's just, there's a conflict there in your mind, and most people don't like that. So they have to convince themselves that they are doing the right thing, even if it's the wrong thing, and that means deceiving yourself and talking yourself into it that this really is a good idea. And if you tell yourself that long enough, then it becomes
You can absolutely believe it. When the very first time I gave serious consideration to the fact that I was drinking too much, I was only about 28, and I read in a women's magazine, and the exact words were, if you cannot go 6 months without drinking, you probably have a problem. And I immediately set about to do that, to go 6 months without drinking. I wasn't able to do it. And so I took that and reversed it and said to myself, if you can go 6 months without drinking, you don't have a problem. And I went 5 months and 1 week. That's almost 6 months. I don't have a problem. And I drank for another 12 years.
Wow.
And it got bad. And then I had to, if you drink in the morning, you have a problem. Well, I only drank in the morning when I put amaretto in my coffee. Deliberately started buying amaretto so I could put it in my coffee, because that made it okay.
Yeah.
If you go to the liquor store more than once a week, you have a problem. Oh, we can solve that because the grocery store has alcohol. Therefore, if you put the beer in the grocery cart with the milk, it's okay. That is how people, but that is exactly what I did. And for 12 years, and I drank more and more and more.
Self-deception.
Right. I had to quit going out to drink. I did my drinking at home, because if you go out to drink and you wind up going home with some man, you got a problem. But you can drink the same amount at home and not even see a man, and you're okay.
Funny how the human mind works.
And people will do that with a girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. No, that's absolutely true. That's an excellent example. So being wise in one's own eyes is meaningless if one is not wise in God's sight. That's what we should really strive to be, is wise in God's sight. And how do you know you're wise in His sight? Well, you live according to His word. Do what He says. First, I didn't give you the verse. 2 Corinthians 10 and verse 18. For not he that commendeth himself is approved, but whom the Lord commendeth. We're told in 1 Corinthians 3 and verse 20 that the Lord knoweth the thoughts of the wise, that they are vain. And He pronounces a woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. That's what Isaiah 5 and verse 21 says. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. So Christians are exhorted to mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits, as it says there in Romans 12 and verse 16. So connected to being wise in your own conceits is minding high things, right? Some people like to get themselves involved and to think about and talk about things that are really above their pay grade, right? Things that they don't really know enough about, but they like to sound smart and they like to discuss it. I remember talking back with somebody in Minnesota, and we were talking about quantum physics. And I told the guy that, I said, really, and I mean, I probably said about 3 sentences, and I said, that's really all that I know about quantum physics, really. He's like, oh no, come on. Because I went to school for engineering or whatever, and I'm like, no, really, that's all I know. I don't know anything else about it. I don't really have anything else intelligent to say about it. And there was nothing, and maybe this is wise on my own sight, but I think quantum physics is bunk. Now maybe I'm just stupid and can't understand it, but I think the idea that something can be and not be at the same time in the same place is impossible. And that's basically what my understanding, what quantum physics teaches, is that something, something observed can be one way when you look at it from one standpoint, and another way when you look at it from another standpoint, and it's crazy. I don't know about any of that. And then they have quantum computing, which is based on quantum physics, supposedly. And I watched a video on this the other day that somebody sent me, and I think that stuff is satanic. I really think that there's something spiritual, satanic going on in quantum computing. They keep that stuff at like a fraction of a degree above absolute zero, the chip, and it's in traditional computers, you have transistors that are either on or off, and that gives you your 1 or your 0, and there's only 1s and 0s. But in quantum computing, supposedly, and I watched these videos, and they're supposed to explain it, and I watch it, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. I mean, maybe I'm just stupid, but this doesn't make any sense to me. And that the bit can actually be not 1. It can be something else besides 1 or 0, but whenever you measure it, it's a 1 or a 0. But if you don't measure it, it can be something else when it's not being measured. And then supposedly they can use this to do computing. And it's like, how does that possibly work? Whenever you measure it and it's a 1 or a 0, but when it's not being measured, so how do you know what it's doing? And how is it computing when you can't even measure it and you don't? And then the guy explains it like it's like that there's parallel universes, and the parallel universes overlap, and then the thing can be and not be and at the same time. And just really strange. I honestly think it's satanic. Now that's just coming from a simple country bumpkin like me, but
it's almost like it's got to be alive to do that.
Well, and here's the funny thing. They've got this big black box with this quantum computer in there, and the guy that designed the thing said, yeah, it's really weird. It's like when you stand next to it, you hear like ba-bump, ba-bump, ba-bump. It sounds like a beating heart. And I'm just like, this is just bizarre. I really think it's like a modern day version of occult mysticism, like into technology. And
you sound like the guys on the Big Bang Theory.
Really?
Have you ever seen that show?
I think I saw one clip of it or something.
What does quantum mean? I know there was a show, we didn't watch it, but it was called Quantum Leap, and I think the guy would did he go in different times?
Yeah.
He'd go forward or backward in time. What does quantum mean?
Oh, that's a good question.
I don't know.
I don't know. If it's some other, like a different place or something, or like something like that. Like I said, 3 sentences is about all I know about it. So, yeah. So, yeah. But anyway, I don't spend a whole lot of time dabbling. I mean, basically everything I just told you is everything I know about that subject, and it probably wasn't all that coherent because I don't really understand it very well. But that's about it. So anyway, I don't try to, and nobody should try to sound smart by talking about something that you don't know much about. David was no simpleton, and yet he left Solomon this good example of a wise and a rich and a powerful man who was humble enough to write the following in Psalm 131 and verse 1. Psalm 131 and verse 1. And by the way, and here's where it really gets freaky, because these people think, I can't remember the guy's name, but he owns the company D-Wave, and they make these quantum computers. And this guy's a devil. I'm certain of it. and he thinks that they will have true artificial intelligence within like 10 to 30 years from now, or something like 2030 to 2050. They're not sure. Talk about, what James said there. Go to ye that say today and tomorrow we'll do this and that. But anyway, that they think they'll have true artificial intelligence where they will be able to make machines that can perform every single function of a human brain, only better. So emotions, true thinking, like not just programs where it just does what you tell it to, but it can truly think on its own. And which, if they could, I don't believe they could ever actually do that. I don't think they will. But if they do, that's totally frightening, because then the machines, they say, could actually improve their own intelligence because they'd be smart enough to reprogram themselves and whatever. So,
like Terminator
well, I hope,
stuff.
yeah, like Terminator stuff. I hope I would be dead when it happens too.
We all
But
will be.
and then there's other people that have warned about, like, you people are messing with fire here, and if you created these things, then how do you control them?
That's like Lawnmower Man. Have you ever saw that movie, Lawnmower Man?
No.
That's where he gets so smart that he wants to rule the world because he gets so smart.
Yeah. And what would stop these androids or whatever from doing the same thing? I don't think they'll ever get there, but
Well, you got to think too that as old as 4 of us are here, the things that we was told might happen 50 years from now, well, that will never happen. It has happened.
yeah, that's
It
true.
has happened.
That is true. We don't have flying cars yet, but
We have computers, and we didn't even know what they were back in the
Yeah.
50s.
and technology is going at exponential rates. So yeah, it's. I guess I just think with this thing, it seems like it's a. What's the word I'm looking for? It's fundamentally different, just because I can't see how a thing can create something smarter than itself. Like I can't see how a human being could create a machine that is smarter than the human being.
The devil can.
The devil can, and maybe they could through the devil, through satanic inspiration or something. That could be possible, certainly. But on their own, I can't see.
You wonder what they're doing, all these hidden secret underground bunkers they have hidden all over the place.
Yeah, I think they know something that we don't.
They
Google's
claim
pretty
now that
smart.
the government's got entire highway systems under the ground that we don't know about.
Really? Yeah. Nothing would surprise me, I guess, these days. Okay, yeah, so we're not going to get through the third verse tonight, but so Psalm 131:1. David said, Lord, my heart is not haughty, which is another word for pride or arrogance. My heart is not haughty, nor mine eyes lofty. Neither do I exercise myself in great matters or things too high for me. David wasn't having a discourse about quantum physics, was he? Things are too high for me, David said. I don't mind those things. I let that up to some other people that think they're smart. As the old saying goes, better to keep silent and have men think you a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. I just love that saying. And I have employed that saying in my life before. I remember in my old job when just sitting there with somebody was talking about something that I just was over my head, and I just didn't say anything because I thought, it's probably just best to keep my mouth shut. And maybe they will think that I'm stupid, but at least if I open my mouth, they'll know, so.
Even a fool when he holdeth his peace is counted
Yes,
wise.
that's right.
Remember your job interview? It's like they were asking you about some type of software, and you told them that you didn't know about it.
That's right, yeah. See, this is where they can catch you, too. I was in an interview, and they said something about they programmed with graph sets. You know what graph sets are? I'm like, no, I don't think I've ever heard of them. He's like, yeah, you wouldn't have because we came up with them. But if I would have been like, oh yeah, graph sets, yeah, we use those at an old company, they'd be like, oh really, did you, huh? So anyway, if you don't know something, just say you don't know it, because it'll come back to bite you. It is a mark of wisdom to recognize when one who is engaged in a discussion of a topic that is too high for him, and to thus bow out humbly rather than pressing on proudly. Let me read that again. I don't think I got that right. It is a mark of wisdom to recognize when one is engaged in a discussion of topic that is too high for him, and to thus bow out humbly rather than pressing on proudly. That's right. I think I actually read the words correctly, but I had the wrong emphasis. I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable, and it didn't turn out right. Okay, and then the last part. We're not going to get to the third verse. No, we won't tonight. Again, fear the Lord and depart from evil. So be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. So here is God's antidote to becoming high-minded, is to fear him and to depart from evil. This includes the evil of pride, which God hates. Look at Proverbs 16 and verse 5. This is one of the oldest, actually it is the oldest, and probably one of the most insidious sins out there, is pride. Remember what it says about, it was spoken of a young candidate for the ministry, that he's not to be a novice, lest being lifted up with pride he fall into the condemnation of the devil. The devil's condemnation was his pride. Remember, I will be like the Most High, right? So that's why I say it's the oldest sin. It was the very first one. Proverbs 16 and verse 5 says, everyone that is proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord, though hand join in hand, he shall not be unpunished. So an abomination is a combined combined feeling of disgust and hatred. So God really is disgusted by and hates pride and proud looks. So departing from evil is only possible when a man fears God and his judgments of it. Because otherwise there would be no reason to depart from evil. If you didn't fear God's judgment of it, then, if you can gain by evil, then why not do it, right? But if you think that God will judge it and believe that, then that will be an impetus to depart from evil. Proverbs 8:13 tells us that the fear of the Lord is to hate evil, and the first two evils that are listed in that verse are pride and arrogancy, and the evil way is the third one. Pride and arrogancy, which brings us back to not being wise in our own eyes. When a man fears the Lord, he does so in part because of the awe-inspiring infinite knowledge and wisdom of God. This would be one of the reasons. Look at Psalm 139, verses 1 through 6. This would be one reason to fear God. If you ever just sit down someday and just think about how much intelligence and knowledge God must have to have created the universe, to have created human beings, and how complex and incredibly complex the human mind is, and God created all that. And you have to be smarter. This is why I don't think artificial intelligence is coming, because you have to be smarter than something to create it. And if you can't create something that's smarter than yourself, I don't think so anyway. But if you think about just how infinitely intelligent God has to be and how infinitely powerful he has to be, it would blow your mind. I read a book one time, short little book. It was written at a very simple level. It wasn't like a scholarly journal or something, but just talked about the complexity of the human brain, of the eye, of all of the tubes that we have in us, like all of the vessels and arteries, and the tubes. I forget, they're like, I don't know if it's miles or something, but it's like there's just an amazing amount of tubes within us that connect all of our parts together, and nerves and all that stuff, and they tell us supposedly it all evolved somehow. It's just foolishness to think of such a thing. Anyway, Psalm 139, 1 through 6. O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest my down sitting and mine uprising. Thou understandest my thought afar off. Okay, it's one thing to understand one person's thoughts afar off, but imagine 7 billion people and the Lord understands all of their thoughts afar off. Now that knowledge is too wonderful for me. Just to conceive of 7 billion people is one thing. I can't even do that. But to conceive of knowing all of their thoughts at the same time.
And all the ones
blow
that
your
are
mind.
dead, and all the ones that aren't born yet.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word in my tongue, but lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether. It says that the answer of the tongue is from the Lord, right? The thoughts of the heart and the answer of the tongue is from the Lord. Thou hast beset me behind and before, and laid thine hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I